well, okay, so let's kick off then with introduction. So thanks to everyone for joining this session. So obviously it's organized by Credville Limited. It's a Nigerian company trading as Gigfied Limited. So we have a freelance platform called Gigfied, like I said earlier. So essentially what the platform is a meeting place for freelancers and also employers. And typically the employers that we have can be anyone really, SMEs, individuals who have side projects, looking for freelancers that have an expertise that they don't necessarily have. So what essentially what Gigfied does is creating that meeting platform to help to facilitate that engagement between the two of them. In addition to that as well, we've recently launched a job board where employers can also post their live jobs to the platform as well. And actually, I think this is our first or second month since we launched that feature on the platform. And we've really been seeing traffic of employers posting jobs on the platform. And I would say at the moment, posting jobs on our platform is free at the moment, obviously because we are new, and essentially we're hoping that we'll be able to gather some bit of momentum. And how we stand out from the crowd is the quality of service that we provide. So we're a global firm, but obviously our focus at the moment is Nigeria, the Nigerian market, just because we believe that the market in Nigeria is virgin, and there is scope for enhancement, for enlargement in the area. Okay, so just wrote out a few points. So some of the features that we have on our platform that would enable or that would help employers are we have what we call a top talent scheme. So this is essentially what we help employers to sieve potential candidates. So what so our platform candidates will register on the platform, and they get to opt into this top talent scheme where we do like an interview, first interview just to make sure that the skills that they are listing on the platform is valid. So hopefully that will be like a good benefit for employers. So to have that feature. And then also we also have like a ratings feature as well, where freelancers complete jobs and employers get to rate them. And so if you as an employer looking for a job, for instance, obviously it's important that you look at the ratings of freelancers before you engage them. And then finally, we also have an identity verification scheme as well. So it's a security feature. So it's an added advantage in that freelancers get to verify their identity, and hopefully gives assurance to employers that the person on the other side is genuine. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it about us. So what's the essence of this this session? So really it's just an opportunity to empower employers. Obviously we're not just about the business side of things, but actually we want to empower employers to be able to to see the benefit of hiring freelancers. And so that's what we're hoping that this session would provide. And obviously it's being recorded, so hopefully we'll upload this on our platform, for instance, or maybe publish some clips from here to kind of like to share the message. Okay, so having said that, then so can I maybe just introduce the panel then? So obviously we have Aderemi Oseni. So Remy is a chartered accountant and also a business owner. So Remy runs Chari Consulting, and also has an extensive experience background working with a lot of small businesses. And then also we have Odike, Brian, as we call him. So Brian owns No-Bound FX and Investment Solutions. It's an FX and FX platform. Also, Brian, is a businessman, and I would say that, I think he's engaged a lot of freelancers in the past as well. So very good experience to share. And then last but not least, we have Dami Onalaja-Aliu as a seasoned HR consultant. So hopefully, just give us a bit of spin from HR perspective. Okay, so obviously, as we go on anyway, you have an opportunity to introduce yourselves. So shall we kick off then? Maybe Remy, just to give us some bit of background on your experience with hiring freelancers in the past, and how did you find that experience, and just some bit of insight.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So yes, in terms of running my own business, I have engaged a few freelancers in the past. I'm currently working with a few at the minute as well. So I would say that my experience has been overall positive. And mainly in terms of, one, the flexibility offers my business. So essentially what that means is if I have certain kind of one-off jobs or tasks or ad-hoc work or tasks that I need to get done, then I don't necessarily need to go through the overall kind of full employment cycle to get that done, because I can certainly reach out through, a platform like Gigfied, to reach out to, qualified freelancers who have the experience, who can kind of jump in because of the experience, can just jump in and hit the ground running, deliver the projects or tasks within the defined time scales, and we're good to go. So for me, the number one thing is that flexibility in terms of that flexible approach to delivering, key tasks that support my business.
Thanks, Remy. And Brian, do you want to maybe come in from your own perspective?
Yeah, it's quite similar to Remy's experience as well. I hired a freelancer that developed the application that I was using for my business, and it was quite the experience. Is like Remy said, I think is having access to pay as you go. As I like to think about it as a pay as you go type model where you're only paying for what you need at a time. So it was a very good experience, I have to say, because it meant that especially if you're a small business and you're bootstrapping, and your funding is usually tight, so you have to manage how you spend your money judiciously. It becomes difficult to have someone on a full-time payroll in that sort of model. So having that flexibility where you can get really good talent, as Remy pointed out, and at an affordable price, and only when you need it, is just perfect. So I think it's a no-brainer for any business, and a number of things have enabled this to happen in this time and in this day and age. It's technology that's kind of aligned it. There's a lot of other factors that's going to help create that environment that's making it possible. So it's a good experience, and if anyone is on the call that is all listening to this, that's kind of thinking about it, then it's a no-brainer.
Okay, no, thanks. Maybe Dami, just to bring you in from a HR perspective, right? So obviously, so what trends, would you say have you noticed, right? So, is it a case that perhaps a lot of business would perhaps would want to hire more freelancers in the future, or the market is a bit different, like, so from a trend perspective, for instance, so what would you want to add to what maybe Brian and Remy has said?
Yeah, so I think there's this myth going around saying that freelancing is changing, and it's not, but this is not even close to true. So from a market trend perspective, so from the Institute of Futurists, so there's a futurist group. So futurists are people whose job it is to predict the future, right? And so they look at market trends, they look at data. So it's not guesswork, it's proper research. One of the most interesting ones that's come out is that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 have not yet been created. And as with most jobs, so coming from that HR perspective, as with most jobs, nobody knows what the scope is, what the skills are required are. There's a big shift from this idea of traditional skills to saying that, to even the CEO of JP Morgan recently spoke about how the most important thing you need to learn these days is or to have is skills more than anything else, and it's transferable skills. So I think from a trend perspective, the more people that have those specialist transferable skills, because that's what you get with freelancers. They have experience in different industries, they have experience in different places. They're able to leverage those skills and bring them to your space. So for us, we know, for example, that even with the new operating models, with the things we're looking to do, and it's not just them, it's, across all the different businesses I've been a part of as well, this will always be part of the business model. There's a big thing that I keep remembering. So one of the senior VPs for Amazon, David Limp, said that the easiest or the best way, the quickest way to fail at something is to make it somebody's part-time job, right? Or to fail at innovation is to make it somebody's part-time job. And what he was basically saying is, if you really want to get something done, right, you need to hire somebody and that's their full-time role. In businesses, very often there's a very specific thing they're looking to get done within a specific time frame with a specific cost. And this is where freelancers come into play as well. They need that expertise to hit the ground running. They don't have time to train, to upscale you and all of that. So I think from a market trend perspective, we'll be needing freelance for quite some time.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Dami. So obviously, maybe just to bring you in, Dami, I'll probably, Brian, I'll probably ask you this question first, right? So tell us, just typically, so what kind of jobs, from your own experience, right, have you given to freelancers?
Yeah, so I've given everything from software development. That's one of the key ones. Because I come from a technology background, is also I'm looking for very specific things in terms of the technology stack that the freelancer is familiar with. So, and a platform like yours gives that flexibility. There's a full range there. So if you have enough of the stacks that I'm looking at, then that's one of the things I've hired in the past. So that would be one. Another thing is also, and I have actually hired quite a few people from Nigeria for this, which is graphics design. For some reason, there appears to be like quite a skill cluster of graphic designers in Nigeria. So, and they do a pretty decent job as well, and they earn that foreign currency. Well, in that instance, I'm not sure if that's also applicable from the platform perspective. Yeah, so that's one of the people. So it's graphic design, software development. I toyed with engaging a what they call a writer, so that someone that does like sort of advertising type thing. Is it script writing? I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
script writing. Yeah. So they basically for a product, they kind of write something nice about it, something tailored.
Like a review. Is that like
it's not so much a review. There's
it's called copywriting, actually.
Copywriting, that's what I was thinking of. Yes, copywriting. So I did try to engage someone for that from Nigeria as well. They had like they did English as their first degree or something like that. So, and quite good, very good profile and all that. But it ended up not going ahead because I didn't go ahead with that product. But these are some of those kind of, just to give you an idea of the sort of skills I've kind of gone out to look for. And, those skills continue to be in demand. I'll continue to need a developer in the future for various things. The same with graphic design. There's no end to that sort of marketing materials being produced. A copywriter, like we said, again, very, very useful skills. I needed that there was a product we were trying to push on the Amazon platform, get the product in from China and try and sell that in the UK and that sort of thing. So needed a copywriter to write the script around the product. And so again, very, very good example of some of the scenarios where you need some of the skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Remy, I'll bring you in a minute. But just to corroborate what Brian has said, but even we as well. So we've had to engage, a few graphic designers in Nigeria, and I must say, the quality that we have, received, is outstanding. And to think about the fact that you pay in Naira, so obviously, from an affordability perspective, it's really very low, compared to if you have to hire an equivalent freelancer on a different platform and having to pay in foreign currency. so definitely I will agree with you that, that yes, Nigeria does have a good and talented pool of graphic designers.
Yeah.
So Remy, do you want to maybe just add a few, just more in terms of, from your perspective? I know obviously your background is accounting, but for some of the things that you've done, have you engaged freelancers, and if yes, what type of jobs have you given to them?
Yeah. So in terms of freelance work that I've engaged, it's kind of been a bit of a range from website design to things like bookkeeping and accounting, to things like reconciliation and admin functions as well. So, I mean, the freelance jobs that are offered out that have been supported by freelancers in my business have been helpful in that regard. And I mean, one thing that Brian touched on is a big factor that has helped to accelerate that is technology. So I think we're in a place where technology has come to a point that has allowed or enabled this to be able to happen. And that's really helping. So if you look at technology from the perspective of, say, a platform like Gigfied that is able to connect, for example, businesses to freelancers. If you look at technology in terms of cloud-based software that my freelancers can use anywhere they are in the world to do their reconciliation and bookkeeping. So technology has kind of allowed all that to happen. So I think it's essentially a space that is here to stay, and I would always look to it for help to support my business.
Absolutely. Okay, no, thank you. Right, maybe just to kind of like to focus, a bit more into, so obviously, you have a job, right, and you're looking for a freelancer. So what kind of things do you look at, to enable you, make up your mind on, the which freelancer to select? So I know Brian spoke about the skill sets, listed, for instance. But beyond that, what else do you look out for?
Well, I mean, I have a certain bias towards Africans or Nigerians, to be specific. I know it's probably not the ideal situation, but that's what it is. I feel there's a certain obligation to patronize. If someone has taken the initiative to, find themselves on a platform such as yours and put themselves out there, I feel obligated. I mean, there's all this stuff about giving back or whatever it is, but I feel obligated that that's my starting position. And then, so that's one of it. The other thing is then obviously looking at the skill set, looking at some of what they've done. Right. So I could, in certain situations, for instance, if I start with that certain position and the skill set is not quite on up to what I'm looking for, I could split the job. I could give them some of the job, some parts of the job, and then get the other job to someone else that's, probably more qualified. It's just, again, just to give that opportunity so that, you're encouraging folks to giving them job, giving them an opportunity. There's dignity in work. Is better than having to give someone tips. It's better to give them an actual job. There's something that's derived from there. The other things are obviously the skill sets that they have, and then the previous work that they've done is quite important to see samples of what they've done previously. Typically, there will be some chats back and forth. I'm also looking for, this might sound a bit cheesy, but I'm also looking for some chemistry as well, because I like to hire people that are on roughly the same wavelength as myself. I don't want to spell things out to the nth degree. I want to be able to give an outline of what I'm looking to achieve. And from that, they can ask me a couple of questions and be able to piece together what it is I'm looking for, that sort of thing. So if that chemistry is missing and I'm having to kind of repeat myself or spell things out to the last T, then that's probably not going to work. But that's my own personal preference in terms of hiring people. And therefore, when it's just like, I have another job as well where I do a lot of hiring as well. So it's just like an interview really like a normal job. It's that sort of, you're trying to find someone that will be a nice fit for what you're trying to achieve. So trying to find that right chemistry. And if you get it right, a lot of people that I've hired, I've always gone back to them, because again, it can be quite difficult to kind of sift through so many profiles to try to find the right people that you're looking for. So you tend to kind of circle back to someone that you found that have done a good job for you, kind of thing. So they might not always be available, but that's it's just what it is. Yeah.
Sure. Dami, I'll bring you in just from a HR perspective, for instance, just to talk about, perhaps, the differences, obviously, between, hiring, full-time employee versus a freelancer, for instance. But maybe, Remy, should I get your thoughts on, from your perspective, like, what would you be looking at?
Yeah, so I think Brian has touched on key points there. So, of course, you want to kind of engage someone that you have that has the right vibe, so that you know that, okay, yes, when you're kind of chatting to the person for the first time, you get the vibe that, okay, this is someone I can work with and have a good working relationship. And two, you want to look at the experience, what skill set does this person have, what has he done in the past. Yes, and apart from that, you want to make sure that you have someone that is able to come in and hit the ground running. So you don't want to. That's why you're looking for a freelancer. Someone that has that backlog of experience that he can come in and that impact immediately once he's on board. So those are the key things I look at when a freelancer. I would say predominantly all the freelancers are recruited out of Nigeria, whether that's by design or by share. I don't know. I've not really given it a thought in terms of having a geographical spread in terms of where I recruit from. But most of my freelancers are people like that. And another thing that I've seen in terms of my experience in engaging freelancers from Nigeria specifically, and I think this is an outcome of the environment they're in. So you can see the hunger. So the hunger to want to deliver something.
Make you happy.
So for them, it's a fantastic opportunity. They want to come in and make that impact, and they have that hunger to deliver, which you tend, from my experience, I've not seen. I don't tend to see in other markets. So when you see that hunger, you know that, okay, this person is going to give their all to make sure that there's impact on your business, you achieve the targets you want to achieve, the tasks you want to do, as a way to achieve. So yeah, so for me, that is very, very crucial in terms of engaging freelancers. So these are the things I look at.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Remy. Dami, do you want to perhaps maybe just from a HR lens, for instance, hiring full-time freelancer, like what's the difference really?
So the vast differences between them. So over the last year of my career, I've done quite a lot of hiring from both sides, and the significant differences between them. So very often when you hire, and this is nothing against permanent staff, I'm a permanent staff somewhere, right? So when you hire permanent staff, very often what they are thinking of is their salary, their bonuses, all of that stuff, office politics. I've had people come in week one and tell me, oh, this isn't the job I really wanted. That other job is the job I wanted. And I'm using this as a stepping stone. And I'm thinking, actually, maybe you shouldn't be telling me this. And I get that quite a lot. I've had, it doesn't matter what race, what anything. I've had quite a lot from every single corner, right? A freelancer is different. So a freelancer is very, very committed to the cause. They are looking at exactly what you've asked them to do. They are a bit more creative and a bit more innovative. By a bit, I'm being nice about that. They're a lot more. And the reason why specifically is very often we give them a task. We don't give them a defined problem. So we say, look, we've been trying to solve this problem for quite some time. We've either not had enough time, we've not had enough resources, and we just have a skills gap within the team. Nobody can do this. Can you go fix this? And it's a problem statement. So we're not looking for an output, we're looking for an outcome. And there's a difference between that. And so sometimes we deal with permanent employees, it's all about output. It's that 9 to 5, tick the box, walk it out, go away kind of thing. And so if you have a very specific project, and don't get me wrong, there are benefits to that, because for longevity of a project, you want someone who's invested in your project. You want someone who will be there years after and knows that if they mess up the project, they still have to see it for the next 3 years, so they can't really mess it up. You want that, right? But at the same time, if you have a project that is really focused, really specific, is really niche, being launched to a massive group, you want a freelancer for that. And so there's a couple of things we would look at for stuff like that. But I hope that kind of explains what I see is the primary difference between both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. Yeah. So I think so you're right about, for longer term projects, right? And maybe perhaps, freelancing might not be, suitable, but obviously, if it's short term project, then of course, a freelancer can be can be the better option. But also I've seen, one of the guys that does development for us, for instance, we've had him for, I don't know how many years, 2 years or so, so we've been able to build that relationship, with him, so even with the short projects, right, he's delivered on those, right, and, kind of like retained him, over and over and over again. So it's, so I would say, yeah, the relationship that is built as well, can play, a role in whether or not you want to, retain a freelancer for a long-term project, or for a long-term project. Right. Okay. So obviously, it's been a lot of positives, right? But I know that the journey is not as positive as we've said. I know Brian's laughing. I know you've had a few experiences yourself. So perhaps, obviously, so looking at the flip side, right? So what are the challenges, right? That we experience with dealing with freelancers, for instance. From our side, for instance, I know that particularly with developers, for instance, we know that we found that because of the demand of that skill set, right? You're probably not the only job they've got, so it's kind of very hard, to have a timeline and agree and stick to a timeline. So I just wonder, should I start with Brian? Perhaps, I know that we've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, so just tell us a little bit more about what challenges you've experienced in dealing with freelancers in the past.
Yeah, I think the example you gave there about software development is a classic example. I've had to go and become a full stack developer myself because of some of the challenges that we encountered. And part of that challenge is having to deal with just an individual, for instance, from a perspective and for that developer background. Now, if you think about it from a development standpoint, most people that maybe starting up their business probably don't have that technology background. It's not that they don't know technology, it's that they're not developers, right? And therefore they are relying, there's a high degree of trust on what the developer is doing. And for the most part, you're not fully aware of what they're doing actually, or how they're doing it. They just give you an admin panel that you go in and you do a few things and everything works like magic, right? So there's a lot of reliance on them. And part of the challenge that we faced as well was there was a lot of feedback coming from the clients as we're building the app, because it's, we've launched it, but it's still, a lot of changes that's happening. Customers are feeding back. Now, ideally, what you would want is as those feedback is coming in, you automatically translating that into changes and updating the app as you go along. But like you said, there's a lot of demand on that particular skills for that particular skill set. So the speed is one of the challenges. Is when you get the feedback, it doesn't translate immediately when you push it to them to say, here's something that's come back, can you deal with this? Because again, they're not dedicated 100% to you. It's usually the model is like you tell them what to build and they build it and they launch it and you test it and it looks okay. But when there is feedback, then it becomes challenging. So I suppose for anyone listening to this, these are things they need to factor in before going into it. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is if there's a lull moment as well, is the maintenance and support going on after they've done the build for you. And we're just talking specifically around software, because for other things, if it's like copywriting, they just do the copywriting and that's what it. Graphic design is the same. If there's a piece of graphic design, they're giving it to you and that's it, right? But software, I think, has more longevity to it, and that's why I'm kind of zooming in on it. And that's where I think we've had the most sort of pain point. We've had a lot of good highlights, and don't get me like we've already covered, but these are some of the lower points. So is that kind of continuity from a support perspective is also, you could have a good agreement in place to say, okay, you're going to do some support. This is how we're going to structure that, so we'll pay you and stuff like that. But again, it depends on what else they've got on their stack and what's going on. And because, like I said earlier, most startups or businesses don't have that familiarity with the technology. Getting someone else in to take over from where those guys left off is not always a very straightforward transition. Finding depends on how they've written the code and how much documentation they have put in place. And if you get someone in, the time is going to take them to try and navigate and unpack what it is this guy has already done. And then you kind of fall back into the same cycle again with this new person. So that can be challenging. So there are ways to kind of try to get around that, but I don't think we'll have enough time on this call to get into that. But just for the purposes of what you mentioned, I think those are some of the pain points.
Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously in this series, right? So I think the next series we're going to run is maybe just focusing on freelancers, in particular. But maybe perhaps we can have like a follow-up session maybe later on, based on feedback that we receive from this session on, which particular areas we should focus on. Okay, Remy, do you want to maybe step in? From your perspective, what challenges, did you find dealing with freelancers?
I think for me, from an accounting service perspective, the main challenge has been data privacy. But again, is trying to make sure that you're outsourcing a function to a freelancer who's Nigerian or here in the UK. He has access to client data. How do you manage that data privacy side of things? And to mitigate that, it's predominantly technology, which is what I try to use, which is what I'm using. So have a cloud-based system where that allows that remote working. Of course, for a freelancer, you're providing the required kit for him to be able to do the work. So you give them the laptops, good quality laptops, they can do this. With cloud-based infrastructure, they can work remotely without having to physically download anything to the laptop they have. They can work. So technology in a way has helped to kind of mitigate that aspect to make sure that whatever data you have there remains in a UK-based cloud location. Whatever they have is kind of the only type access. You can actually take any documentation out of the system. Apart from that, there is the issue around oversight and control in terms of, okay, I've assigned you a bookkeeping task or I've assigned you a reconciliation task. You're meant to deliver it within this time frame. Are you actually doing what you need to do within that time frame? And again, the way I try to mitigate that is, from the onboarding process in terms of how do you come across when you engage you? Do you have the hunger? Are you ready to hit the ground running? So to a very large extent, if you get it right from the start in terms of who you've chosen, then you're kind of mitigating that oversight and control issue, because you get on well together, they understand the expectation, understand the tasks and the to do as a whole. And of course, the experience also comes into play, because this is someone that has bringing a range of experience into your business. Then they understand the impact of not delivering when they need to deliver, how it impacts your business and impacts your client. And therefore, again, the recruitment process helps you to get that challenge. So I think these are the key things for me from my perspective.
Okay, no, absolutely. No, thanks, Remy. So just to talk about the previous one, I think that's, it's a key concern. And so for us, for instance, what we have is, so we have a what's called a workspace. So on the platform, so where there is an agreement between freelancers and and employers. So all of the job done in a workspace. So and hopefully that I think I don't think you can, eradicate, privacy entirely, but hopefully in a way, having that working within that workspace, I guess limits, the privacy concerns, a little bit. But obviously, I think it's just going to be a concern that cannot be eradicated. Okay, so then obviously just conscious of time, so I'm just really keen that we wrap up 8:20 on the dot. Just looking. Dami, do you want to, obviously I know that is anything that you want to comment on challenges? Obviously, just conscious that perhaps maybe your experience with freelancers is maybe a bit limited, but is there anything that you want to say?
I mean, I work in global technology right now. We have 56,000 employees. A good chunk of them are freelancers. So I actually have quite a lot of experience in that world. And every area of design, from software engineering to product management to product adoption, cost, whatever you want to call it. Now, the biggest difference, I think some of the guys have already mentioned, is that I suppose it always boils down to that. I don't like the word control personally, like command and control, even though it's part of organizational design, right? But actually, it's the same thing I'm trying to say, where you've assigned a particular piece of work, you're trying to understand within that piece of work, have they actually completed the action? So one thing that I never do or I'd recommend is I don't monitor everybody's time. Like, oh, you have to do it between 9 to 5, or you have to do it between, you have a task. You have, very often it's a problem statement, to be honest. And we're saying this is the remit of what you can use, because by whether you like it or not, it will be defined by the tools that you have access to. So there will be a limit to it. And so within that world is understanding at what stage they're at. And so the way we've mitigated some of these problems is by creating an operating model, in which case we have daily stand-ups, or we have scrums where we sit down and we talk through this. I'm talking technical nonsense now, right? But we have regular meetings where we sit and we talk about what's going on. So it's like 10-minute, 15-minute catch-ups, just where we are. But what I'm really looking to understand is the impediment, because if your freelancer has no impediments after 2 weeks, they're not working, right? So something's off there. If they don't have any blockers, they have nothing they need to escalate to you because they've not paid. Yeah, something's off there, right? They missed something from either the ecosystem they're trying to build, whatever it is they're building into, or they missed something. So that's usually where the biggest challenge comes from. And the second part is what is both a positive can sometimes be a negative, which is that freedom from politics. So because they're not involved in the politics, because there is no long-term career conversation thinking process in their head, they're really about the task and whatever you're paying them, that sometimes works against you, in the sense that, I suppose, without having to go into too much detail, sometimes that's not a good thing. So one of the things we always have to think about is like, and I think Brian had mentioned this a bit, is the longevity of the product. So if we're looking to build something that we know will still be around for 10 years, is a freelancer the best person to do this? Or do we need to hire in hand? Do we need to start the project with a freelancer and then bring in permanent? Because it takes a while to do clearance and all of that. So there's a couple of things in there, but I think I'll stop there just because of time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you, Dami. Yeah, right. Okay. So maybe just, wrapping up, right, and just bringing this closer to Nigeria then. Like I said in my opening remarks, right? So, so Nigeria, is still behind, when compared in the freelance market space. When you compare, the development in freelancing versus, what happens in the Western world, like in the UK, in the US, and a lot of Europe. So maybe perhaps, just from your perspective, right? Like, so what do you think the challenges for Nigeria, right? And, accepting freelancing? Because a lot of people, no jobs, or perhaps, a lot of spare time, full-time job, a lot of spare time, want to earn some bit of, income on the side, and I think freelancing is good for them, but obviously it's not been embraced in Nigeria, or to a large scale. And also from an employer perspective as well, not a lot of employers are, going for freelancing in Nigeria. So, perhaps when you start, what do you think the challenges are for Nigeria? And, perhaps, is there like a path to, forward? So anyone can start really.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first challenge, or the biggest challenge, will always be psychological. It will always be emotional, right? So before you start going into any physical contract, I think the guys have mentioned this already. Before you start talking, oh, how much and all of that, there's that vibe feeling that has been referred to. So there's the part of trust. So there's the part of psychological safety. Do I trust you enough to actually? Because at the end of the day, this is how we feed our families, right? So our job is how we feed our families. It's not something we mess around with. So there's that part about trust, and there's that part about understanding, how do we navigate some of the challenges we have? How do we take care of privacy? How do we take care of security? How do we actually do this legally as well from a legislation perspective? Like, there's some client data you can't transfer out to the UK for GDPR reasons or whatever the reasons might be, right? So how do you navigate all of those things, right? So within Nigeria, there will always be that challenge. Now, to put a way forward, I think the way forward is to create a system that it falls down to the system and not the individual. I think Nigeria has long lived with a bad stigma, right? So whether it's 419 or whatever nonsense has been peddled out there, right? However, what I found very, very true is that the same Nigerians that are supposedly corrupt and 419 as the biggest achievers in the US, right, of any immigration or immigrant population, they're the highest achievers. The same people that we're talking about are some of the highest achievers in any community here as well in the UK. So I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the system that they work in is designed to prevent that level of fraud, because those same, do you know what I mean? So I think it boils down to creating a system, creating a platform, which I'm hoping Gigfied does, that actually allows people to be able to have that psychological safety, that trust, that sentiment, and look at their stories, look at key performance indicators, sign those contracts, get it all, all of those things can be housed in there. Now, you will never really eradicate all of this, because at the end of the day, people buy people, right? And I don't mean that in a weird way, but you do you know what I mean? So you'll never completely eradicate it, but at least that's a step closer.
Absolutely, no, fantastic, yeah. And just touch on what you spoke about earlier. Yes, so we do have measures, right, to kind of like to create a safe environment for users in Gigfied. I spoke about the identity verification scheme that we have on the portal, and then also as well, the ratings as well. So employers can actually see the jobs that freelancers have completed before going on to hire them. So we do have that. Right. Okay. So Remy, Brian, who wants to go?
So if I want to jump in right there, so I think one of the key things that has held Nigeria back is technology. So if you think about it, this is something different, but just to kind of digress a little bit, there's this other project I'm working on, which is in kind of financial literacy and financial empowerment space. And it says, only 3% of the Nigerian population have access to credit. And essentially, a lot of that can be changed by access to technology. Because if you think about how technology is changing the financial landscape in Nigeria, we have the fintech springing up. The same thing applies to employment. The more we're able to harness technology to be able to offer these kind of opportunities, then the more the movement towards freelancing will be. Once the technology base is there for people to be able to harness, for you to be able to communicate, over the internet, to assign tasks, the more that is available, the more people can embrace it. Another thing which is kind of related to what that was talking about is culture. So the work culture in Nigeria has always been kind of, for the people in the kind of formal employment space, and even in the small businesses, is, you come to work, you show up 8 to 5, and then you go back home. In Nigeria, the culture, and if you hear the language, from the language, when people relate in the formal environment, there's Oga Sam, Oga Dami, Oga Brian, those kind of things. There's that culture of, you have to, there's that physical requirement to always demonstrate, that respect. remote working takes away all of that. So again, it takes a kind of cultural shift, I think, in my view, for people to begin to say, okay, well, we can actually do things differently in a simpler way, by leveraging technology, and we don't have to be in the office doing Orgasa, pushing files all over the place. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's that technology, that cultural aspect of it as well. But gradually, with technology in Nigeria and platforms like Gigfied, there's the opportunity to actually look for and take advantage of those platforms and just change this kind of approach to work within a shorter space of time that we've seen in the developed world. So I think those are my perspective.
Excellent. Thank you, Remy. And Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I know we're out of time now, so I'll just wrap it up in 1 minute. I think Dami and Remy already said it all. I think Dami touched on what I thought was, from my perspective, was closest, which was trust. To your original question around why would, from a Nigerian perspective, why are employers not adopting this as much, and why are individuals not kind of stepping up to it? I think it's down to trust, and it's also a bit of what Remy said there, which is culture as well. But I just have a slightly different spin on that, because my experience, and I don't mean this as about, I'm Nigerian, but I think the work ethics in Nigeria is not quite there to a certain degree. And my sister-in-law runs a HR company, and she speaks to this to a certain, and that's not to paint everyone with one massive branch, but just from some of the stats, the work ethics can be a challenge, and therefore that to some degree reduces the trust element, like what Dami was saying. Whilst you're not monitoring someone 9 to 5 or micromanaging what they do and trying to figure out every step of it, whilst you're trying not to do that, it takes quite a bit in the Nigerian environment to trust fully that people are just getting on with it, sort of thing. So I think a platform like Gigfied helps to a large degree, because it does one thing. It forces the employer to articulate the problem, as Dami said, very clearly. So you articulate that very precisely as well, so that the outcome, Dami said, yes, that you're trying to get is clear. So, and agreed upfront, and it's all tied into the contract that you sign on the platform with the person that is going to deliver it, the freelancer. So I think that goes a long way. These are some of the things that are not there just now, which having a platform like Gigfied starts to solve some of those problems. It wouldn't go away entirely. There'll be a lot of tedious elements to it. Is the discipline that it would take for an employer to sit down and actually articulate their problem clearly, versus if they have someone full-time and they can just just ask them to get on with it, but they haven't clearly defined the problem. But this kind of almost forces them to a certain degree to reflect and get it out there, and increases the amount of trust that they can have. So I think those are some of the challenges that we have, and this is a step in the right direction for sure.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. So just before we come to closing remarks, let me just see if there is anyone on the call with any question. Perhaps we just have time for maybe just one question. Right. Okay. So I'll take silence to be no questions. Okay. So if I just go in the order I started. So Remy, closing remarks before we conclude. I think you're amused, Remy.
Just a quick one, really. So yeah, thanks for Sam for bringing this together. I think it's a fantastic initiative. I think it's a step in the right direction. And hopefully, it serves as one of the key contributions for opening up the Nigerian market, because essentially there's a lot of talent in there. And I think if you've been following the trends, maybe you can see that globally it's beginning to be recognized that there's a talent pool in Nigeria that can be harnessed. And this is a fantastic platform for that. I'm aware when I engage the younger generation in Nigeria, in terms of my cousins and my interviews professionals in Nigeria, and when we talk about the experiences and the kind of opportunities they're seeing in terms of international players coming to try to attract talent from Nigeria. You know, it's a recognition of the fact that there's that talent pool there. And this platform, Gigfied, then opens out to people who are allowed to be able to kind of start. And by default, it also helps to, in the long run, develop Nigeria in terms of GDP growth. Because the talent can earn, money not necessarily coming from the local sources, but from international sources. That adds value back to the economy, and it grows the economy because there's more resources flowing into the Nigerian economy. That's the start of economic development. But as it stands, Nigeria, as we have it, we don't have that, infrastructure in place to be able to provide employment to a lot of our graduates. So this kind of platform opens up that opportunity for people to be able to kind of do work, earn money, and then once the money comes in, they spend the money locally in Nigeria. That spurs economic development. So good job, Sam. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks, Remy. Brian?
Yeah, I will echo the same thing. I mean, Remy put it very aptly and beautifully as well. So I would echo exactly what he said there, Sam. And, we've been with you since the start of this journey. I know when this was a conceptual idea and now you've translated it to this point. I think one of the things, the battle scars of starting up a business is never the projections that you make, is going to be a long ride, is what it's going to be. But it's starting off on a very, very good foundation, is what it is. And it's such a good idea and it's so needed right now in Nigeria. There's a lot of people finishing jobs. It's expanding the scope of what people are doing, because a lot of people are limiting themselves to a certain degree. And that's part of why I chose the name No Bound for my company, because it's breaking down the boundaries. And that's what Gigfied is doing. It's breaking down the boundaries so that people, it's a global village now. So people shouldn't limit themselves to just Nigeria. And this platform gives them that opportunity to be able to spread their wings and think globally. So I think it's a very good one. There is so much in terms of the possibilities and which directions it could go. But as it is, it's a very brilliant idea. And if anyone is watching this, embrace it, run with it, just sign up, whether you are an employer or you're a freelancer, just sign up, engage with it. And I think it's worthwhile, definitely.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. Right. Okay. Dami, last but not least.
No problem. I'll make this really quick. I suppose everyone's spoken about the platform, how good it will be, and the Nigerian economy. I think mine will probably be more of a word of advice to everyone as well. So for the companies that are looking to handle or to hire freelancers, don't overthink it. Get your systems right. At the end of the day, you're in control of that. When you get your systems right, you'll be able to, all the risks we've spoken about, all of those challenges, you'll be able to actually cater to that as best as possible. For freelancers, I think Brian mentioned this a bit. I hope I got this right. So very often we end up using the same people. So once you've done an incredible job, you end up coming back to the same guy anyway, over and over again. There is a focus, and think of it from the business perspective, because one of the challenges always is we want to work with people that are missionaries, not mercenaries. We want to work with people that are more focused on outcomes, not output. And so if you keep yourself in that mindset and think of the business as your business, whatever business you have, you're helping, it will go a long way. But not only will it go a long way for yourself, it will go a long way for any future freelance as well, because sometimes, that is kind of like that friend who had a bad relationship and all of a sudden has sworn off every relationship, right? You don't want to be that person who created that, right? So there's that part to bear in mind, but hopefully you have a nice, successful freelance journey, lots of success stories and lots of outcomes along the way.
Excellent. No, thank you. Now I must say thank you so much to Remy, Brian, and Dami for a very, very informative session. Thank you for taking your time. And also thanks to everyone who's joined us live today. And we will be uploading this video, you know, on the platform, on our website, also on the social media, because, you know, we know that it's got a very rich content that would benefit so many people. So I would like to say thank you so much, and I wish you a very happy Easter. Check out our website, www.gigfied.com. I'm sharing at the moment, and yeah, just share it, play with it, and just enjoy. So thank you very much, and have a good Easter.
Thanks.